It's the evening of April 27th, 2014, and Helen Greer looks out her front window to see a fog of death approaching her home. With fear smothering her mind, she does the only thing she can do and runs into the custom-built storm shelter in her home. As the winds envelop the home, Helen is killed. The year is 2011, and Vilonia residents are cleaning up from an intense EF2 tornado that tore directly through the town. While to some, an EF2, a lower-end rating, would be nothing to gawk at, the residents in Vilonia were still affected for life. Little did they know, it would only take 3 years for another tornado to strike. The forecasters at the National Weather Service just issued a 4 out of 5 risk for central Arkansas, and the reason was terrifying. The forecast called for intense, long-track tornadoes. A local meteorologist, Greg D., would announce, "I'm definitely concerned that any thunderstorm that forms over Arkansas will form a tornado tomorrow." All the ingredients were perfectly lining up, and little did they know the outcome would be way worse than they could have ever imagined. It's the morning of the event, and things have only gotten worse. The National Weather Service begins analyzing computer models for the day, and they only become more concerned. Even more storms than expected were being forecasted over Arkansas, and atmospheric ingredients like CAPE, which measure the energy needed to produce storms, were rising to upwards of 4,000 joules per kilogram, an almost freakish level of instability in the air. Due to these measurements and predictions, the forecasters made the difficult decision to upgrade a rare 5 out of 5 high risk for tornadoes over central Arkansas, cementing the idea that things were about to get ugly. Before we continue, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder. War Thunder is a free-to-play, large-scale, multiplayer action game where you can take control of real-life military vehicles for battles across land, air, and sea. With a vast selection of tanks, aircrafts, and naval ships, War Thunder offers an incredibly immersive experience. Every vehicle is meticulously detailed and realistic. The latest update, Storm Warning, takes the experience to the next level. It introduces incredible ray tracing for hyper-realistic visuals and adds new cutting-edge vehicles like the Eurofighter Typhoon or the M44 tank, all playable on the brand new Attica map. Download War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox using the link in the description. New players and those returning after 6 months or more will unlock exclusive bonuses, including 100,000 Silver Lions and the special Eagle of Valor decorator. Plus, you can join the action on the go with War Thunder Mobile, available now on iOS and Android. Now back to the video. For hours, storms bubbled up and died out across central Arkansas. As the sun began to set, forecasters wondered if their warnings had been wrong. That's exactly when near Murfreesboro, one final storm, essentially the last one of the day, began to grow. Within the hour, it continued to grow, becoming the dominant storm in the atmosphere. At the same time, wind shear values began to ramp up, especially near the surface, where nearly 60 miles per hour of rotating air enters the storm, allowing it to begin spinning. Within just a couple of frames, the supercell rapidly organizes, and at 7:06 p.m., a tornado would touch the ground. In Conway, Arkansas, 30 miles to the north, storm chaser Ian Gates was tracking the radar intensely. After a day full of false alarms, this storm looked different. He grabbed his equipment and headed east, knowing he'd need to position himself ahead of the storm's path. What he didn't know was he was about to witness the most violent tornado he's ever seen. Most tornadic storms start off weak, brushing the ground and gaining their bearings. But this storm was not like most. Within 34 seconds of the vortex touching the ground, it would grow to nearly half a mile wide, and the damage was incredible. Unfortunately, the tornado wasn't touching the ground in the middle of nowhere. In fact, it would be turning into a monster directly over a neighborhood. Carrie Tittle saw the tornado warning on her TV and looked out her window to get a view of it. She stated, "It was really a strange sort of green to the atmosphere. I saw trees starting to lay down, and we ran for the center hall." Carrie, her husband, and her 9 children hid under the stairwell of their home, the safest place Carrie could think of. The roar of the vortex became deafening, and suddenly, the entire home was swept off the foundation. 3 of the Tittles, the father, Rob, 20-year-old Tori, and 14-year-old Rebecca, would be killed instantly. The tragedy was almost unfounded. The tornado, moving at highway speeds, went from invisible to horrifically strong within seconds. And this was far from all it would do. As the path began northeast, 3 miles to the east, Matthew Grant would also receive a tornado warning and peer out his window to see the vortex racing through the hills. The tornado can be seen in the video, already remarkably wide, with bands of rain partially obscuring it, turning it into more of a hazy fog than a tornado. The vortex would slightly wobble in size and intensity after this, potentially gaining its bearings as it moved towards the small town of North Point, Arkansas. A group of homes south of North Point is the next target. As the tornado intensifies and completely shreds the area, trees in this area would begin to be debarked, and the top layer of soil would be scoured away, evidence that within the unstable vortex, an incredibly strong core was emerging. It continues to shred trees as it approaches North Point, slightly weakening again and only tearing the roofs off a couple of homes and sparing the majority of the North Point area. This was strange, as earlier the tornado was causing virtually the highest level of destruction. The reason for this variation, and possibly for the rapid formation of the tornado itself, could have something to do with the topography of the area. The tornado's track formed over a mountain ridge known as Brush Mountain, but directly under the ridge, over 1,000 feet below, was the Tittle Home. It's possible a phenomenon known as downsloping occurred here, whereas winds move from very high to very low elevations. Gravity accelerates them downhill, making them much more intense. These winds could have not only enhanced the existing tornadic winds, but also siphoned ingredients into the storm, causing it to intensify and mature at an incredible rate. This would make sense, as after the Tittle Home, elevation would ease out. It's clear that something was fueling the storm to behave this way, and it was nowhere near stopping. Past North Point, the storm would cross through more hills and forests, emerging over the massive Lake Maumelle. At the same time, James Harris, an employee for Central Arkansas Water, was doing late-day checks of the water levels of the lake. As he walked out on the equipment pier, he would spot a dark mass over the water.
I'm not sure what the fuck that is, but that might be a tornado. Oh, here comes the wind. I think that's a tornado.
As the tornado crawls over the lake, it continues to grow in size, turning day into night as it expands to nearly a mile wide. Crossing Lake Maumelle also meant it was now beelining directly for the town of Mayflower, Arkansas. It narrowly misses a group of homes south of Roland as it scales more elevation, but past the elevation sits the massive Arkansas River, another almost 1,000 feet of elevation loss. Mom, Kelly Thompson, would film from a neighborhood atop a hill where the tornado would again appear to be remarkably massive. The National Weather Service would now realize the situation unfolding, as the tornado showed no signs of stopping and now had a massive debris ball on radar, indicative of a large tornado lofting debris thousands of feet into the air. With the path aimed straight for the town, a tornado emergency would be issued for the town of Mayflower. The emergency reads, "Storm spotters and National Weather Service Doppler radar were tracking a large and extremely dangerous tornado. This is a tornado emergency for Mayflower and Vilonia. Take cover now. Roughly 1/3 of all Arkansas tornadoes occur after dark. Do not wait. Take cover now." Directly across the Arkansas River sat a neighborhood of large homes called the River Plantation subdivision. And with the tornado only getting stronger, a worst-case situation was unfolding. One of the homeowners, Tanara Haney, was outside as the storm approached. As the sky began to turn to a murky green, she would begin to film what she was seeing. While the tornado is pretty much completely wrapped in rain over the river, it's very clear something is wrong. Tanara's video ends at 7:24 p.m., and just 60 seconds later, Tanara would take one last image out of her window. The wedge tornado would slam into the River Plantation neighborhood at 7:26 p.m. Inside the core of the tornado, everything it touched would be completely shredded. An enormous 6,000 square foot home in the neighborhood would be nearly flattened to the ground. The tornado would not just stop near the first half of the neighborhood, as a line of homes to the northeast would be impacted as well. This is where the unimaginable would occur, as Helen Greer ran inside her home, which was directly in the center of the path. Her and her husband would shelter inside the pre-installed above-ground storm cellar. As the extreme winds wiped the rest of their home off its foundation, a chunk of debris impacted the shelter's door, causing it to cave in and fail. Wind and shrapnel blasted into the cellar, throwing Helen against one of the concrete walls and sadly killing her. Her husband would survive with major injuries. Not many images or videos of the tornado exist beyond this point. It's presumed with the incredible strength and growing size of the tornado, it also became rain-wrapped to the point of invisibility. This is confirmed by some of the only images we do have, which essentially show a dark haze. Exiting the River Plantation subdivision, the vortex would cross over a line of homes, shredding multiple to piles of debris. Something else sat in the path, however, an electrical substation providing power to most of the town of Mayflower. It sat squarely in the path, and within just a couple of seconds, the town's power would go out. The substation would be turned into a mangled mess. Multiple transmission towers were turned to meshes of metal, and millions of dollars in damages would be inflicted. Even worse though, if the residents hadn't noticed the warnings by now, there was little hope they would become aware of them. Northeast of the substation, a group of rural homes sat. Multiple of them, some not even in the direct path, would be completely swept off their slabs. Also in the vicinity, trees were flattened in large swaths as the tornado continued to grow in width. It was now entering the town of Mayflower, Arkansas. As the vortex closed in, drivers on the interstate had no idea there was a tornado heading straight for them. One of the drivers, Cotton Rorschach, would film from his dashcam as he drives straight into the tornado.
Oh wow. That's it right there. Yeah.
We got a new tornado warning, Central Wake County and Central Arkansas until 8 p.m. West Point, Higginson, Providence.
Guys, my ears are popping. Yep, we're in it right now. We're in the tornado. All right, we're pulling over. Oh crap, we're in it.
Yeah, we are.
We're in it.
Ian Gates was getting closer now, fighting through the rain bands that obscured his view. The tornado had grown so large that even from miles away, he could see the dark mass moving directly through Mayflower. The center of the town would be directly impacted by the violent winds. In a neighborhood near the center of town, a 50-year-old man would die as his entire home was lofted into the air and pulverized. Large industrial warehouses and structures would be mangled down to their frames and flattened, and vehicles on the interstate would be thrown and mangled. One vehicle maintenance shop would be torn to nothing as a tornado left toward the northeastern side of town. The carnage would be filmed by others on the interstate who dodged the worst of the winds. Near the town, another massive lake, Lake Conway, sat with multiple lake homes and communities nearby. As the tornado crosses over the body of water, another neighborhood would be directly impacted, leveling over a dozen homes. 82-year-old Robert Oliver would be instantly killed as his home was swept away, crossing over the first half of the lake. A brief separation between the communities in Highway 89 would spare multiple lives, as one man photographed the dark mass leaving the area. The tornado would finish crossing the lake at 7:45 p.m., meaning it had been on the ground for over 45 minutes, remaining almost entirely wrapped in rain and debris. Rural areas of forest would continue to be shredded, but something was different about the damage here. The path began to become shaky and shrink slightly, and this was no coincidence. To the north, an extensive stretch of the Wichita Mountains spanned through the area, and the tornado was now encountering some of the most extreme elevation changes it would experience. Even though it was passing directly over homes and structures, very minimal damage was being inflicted. It was almost as if the tornado was beginning to end. That's exactly when a sudden change would occur. As the storm cleared the mountain, the vortex would begin to once again rapidly and violently strengthen. 2 brick homes just underneath the mountain ridge would be completely swept, with hardly any debris remaining on the foundation. The ground would begin to be scoured away again, this time in a much more violent fashion, and trees were flattened and in some cases mulched. One woman, Sharon Holland, would take the only known photo of the tornado in this area near her storm shelter as it approached. While the photo is incredibly low quality, it would show the tornado now slightly smaller, almost as if it was regaining its bearings. Countless mobile homes and weak structures would be essentially shredded as the tornado began to speed up, peaking as fast as 50 miles per hour through the hilly terrain. The vortex now had its sights on Vilonia, and unless it was planning on weakening as quickly as it intensified, Vilonia would be leveled. The intensity would not let up. It was almost as if something was rapidly fueling the storm. The entire top layer of earth was being dug up now, exposing the reddish-brown mulch of the terrain. The tornado here was also intersecting the path of the EF2 just 3 years prior, and in some cases, it was finishing off the job of abandoned homes and properties that were only partially destroyed. Every home in the direct path was swept away, with some mobile home frames never being found again. The tornado was now entering the outskirts of Vilonia. This is where it would make a name for itself. The first actual neighborhood of Vilonia would be a line of brick homes along Cody Lane. As the core crossed over the road, every single home in the subdivision was swept away. In one home, the Smith family, consisting of Mom, April, Dad, Daniel, and 2 boys, Tyler and Cameron, were thrown with the debris hundreds of yards away. One of April's close friends, Hope, saw the tornado on the news and urged her husband to drive to the Smith home to check on them. When he arrived at the home, April continued to text him. "Please tell me they are okay. Are they hurt? Are they alive? Please tell me they are alive." He would respond, "I can't." While April and Daniel were left in critical condition, the 2 boys, Tyler and Cameron, would pass away at the hospital. They were only 7 and 8 years old. The scene near the Smiths' home looked more akin to a bomb than a tornado. The ground looked like it was bulldozed, and tiny bits of granulated homes from the neighborhood lay behind the stretch of houses. A recently built, large brick house was pulverized to nothing next door. As the tornado continued to chew through the terrain of Vilonia, another fatality would occur on the highway next, as 50-year-old Jamie Collins would get caught in the circulation, attempting to outrun it in her car. On the same highway just to the east, Ian Gates was now positioned with his camera to capture the tornado as it passed in front of him. This would be the only video footage we have of the tornado inside Vilonia as it crossed the road and entered more sporadically populated areas in town. The carnage didn't cease. Home after home was swept away. Debris was granulated. Trees and even bushes were stripped of their bark, and cars were mangled to their frames. The tornado's core would sideswipe a newly built concrete and steel middle school, and yet still, the steel would bend, buckle, and collapse, requiring the entire structure to be torn down and rebuilt. The vortex would cross through open terrain after this, beelining directly for the densely populated center of Vilonia. Every home and building it touched would be pulverized. On one street, morbidly named Cemetery Road, every home on the road would be destroyed, sadly killing a couple living in one. Downtown Vilonia was quite literally left in smithereens. Some areas were buried under piles of dirt and mulch the tornado had dug up, and bits of cars and mangled oak trees mixed in with the carnage. The tornado was intensifying here, and even after downtown Vilonia, another target would end up in the crosshair of the tornado. This target would make the tornado infamous. The Parkwood Meadows subdivision was a new subdivision of tightly packed suburban homes. Little did the residents know, the homes were built with shortcuts. Instead of using proper anchors like bolts for the new home, the builders chose a cheap option: cut nails. These provide essentially no resistance to extreme winds, as the unbelievably strong tornado sliced directly through the subdivision. Almost every home was wiped clean. In one home, 22-year-old Jeffrey Hunter heard the tornado approaching. He texted his mom, "Goodbye, Mama. It's heading right for me." Jeffrey's mom would reply, "I love you, Jeff. You'll make it." Despite properly sheltering in the house, nothing remained of the home, and Jeffrey would not make it, passing away instantly. Across the road, 31-year-old Daniel Wassam would suffer the same fate, protecting his daughter as the tornado would wipe away his house as well. While very little could survive a tornado of this strength, it's hard not to imagine how different these stories would have been if the homes were built up to proper standards. Past the neighborhood, the tornado began to wobble in intensity. Coincidentally, right as it approached a mountain ridge, it would still remain on the ground, shredding poorly built homes as it entered the small community of El Paso, Arkansas. One woman would pass away in her mobile home as it was thrown in the air by the tornado and destroyed. And just east of her home, the tornado would dissipate at 8:07 p.m., exactly 1 hour after the tornado had touched down. The communities of Mayflower and Vilonia are utterly decimated. By the morning, 16 people had lost their lives, including multiple children. Despite the intensity, the National Weather Service in Little Rock would release a final rating of EF4 for the tornado, shy of the highest end EF5 intensity. The survey would become an extreme talking point in how we rate tornadoes. Despite the rating, however, the families and communities affected would be forced to live with the scars left for over a decade now. Vilonia still continues to recover. Thank you for watching.